Picture this. You're sitting at your favorite cafe, scrolling through Instagram, and suddenly you see a name you've known your whole life, Calvin Klein. But it's not the usual ad. Not an American model. Not a Hollywood star. The face looking back at you belongs to a young man from South Korea. Dark hair, sharp jawline, eyes that say more than words ever could. His name is Jungkook. And for a moment, the whole world just stops breathing. But hold on, because this story isn't only about Jungkook. Around the same time, in another corner of that same internet, one of the most iconic jewelry brands in American history, a brand that has been around since 1837, a brand whose name was immortalized in an Audrey Hepburn film, a brand that for nearly 2 centuries only chose the most dazzling names in the Western world, also chose a young man from Korea. His name is Jimin. And with that single announcement, the fashion world changed forever. Today we're talking about 2 names, 2 journeys, and one phenomenon that even Wall Street analysts can't fully explain with numbers. We're talking about how Jungkook and Jimin, 2 members of the K-pop group BTS, managed to conquer the most iconic brands in America and the world. Not through luck, not through a passing hype, but through something that runs far deeper than that. Sit back and get comfortable. Here's the story. Let's start with Jungkook, because his journey with Calvin Klein is one of the most fascinating collaboration stories in modern fashion history. You probably already know Calvin Klein. The brand was born in New York in 1968. For more than 5 decades, the Calvin Klein name has been synonymous with simple denim, understated style, and ads that always make people look twice. They have a long history of choosing exactly the right faces, from Brooke Shields in the 80s to Kate Moss in the 90s. They know what they want. And in March 2023, they decided that the face they wanted was Jungkook. That decision didn't come out of nowhere. Calvin Klein, like every major brand, did their homework. They looked at the data. They looked at the numbers. And the numbers they saw around Jungkook were impossible to ignore. This wasn't just a popular artist. This was a phenomenon in his own right. Every time Jungkook wore something, that product sold out. Every time he appeared in public, the stock value of the brands he was wearing went up. The fashion world calls it the Jungkook effect, and Calvin Klein wanted to be part of that effect. Their first campaign together exploded immediately. Photos of Jungkook in classic Calvin Klein denim spread across the globe in a matter of hours. But the most shocking part wasn't the virality of the photos, it was the market's reaction. Shares in Calvin Klein's parent company, PVH Corp., surged 20% immediately after Jungkook's announcement as brand ambassador. 20%. That's not a small number. That's investor confidence from people whose livelihoods depend on making the right financial calls that Jungkook is a real asset, not just a pretty face in an advertisement. And they weren't wrong. The Spring 2024 campaign, shot at Grand Central Station in New York, set to Iggy Pop's The Passenger, and photographed by world-class photographer Myrtleas, pushed PVH shares to their highest level in 6 years. 6 years. That's not coincidence. That's proof that Jungkook's presence doesn't just move hearts. It moves markets in a very real, very measurable way. Then came October 2025. Calvin Klein came back with Jungkook for their newest denim campaign, this time with Block Rockin' Beats by the Chemical Brothers as the soundtrack and New York City once again as the canvas. That campaign made one thing undeniably clear: this was never a one-season relationship. This is a long-term partnership that keeps growing. And Jungkook's appearance on the Calvin Klein runway at New York Fashion Week 2025 generated a media value of $7.44 million from just one single night. $7.44 million. From one night. From one appearance. If you've ever wondered why the world's biggest brands will do almost anything to have a BTS member by their side, well, there's your answer. Now let's talk about Jimin. And if Jungkook's story is one of energy and movement, then Jimin's story is one of grace and the kind of silence that speaks volumes. Jimin's relationship with Dior actually started long before any contract was ever signed. Back in 2019, when BTS was on their massive Love Yourself, Speak Yourself tour in Los Angeles, Jimin was already wearing designs by Kim Jones, Dior's artistic director at the time. Not because of a deal, not because of a paycheck, but because there was something in Dior's aesthetic that resonated with who Jimin genuinely is. There was a real elegance there, a compatibility that couldn't be manufactured. And Dior saw it. In January 2023, Dior officially announced Jimin as their global brand ambassador. This was not a small decision. Dior is one of the oldest and most respected fashion houses in the world. Since Christian Dior founded it in Paris in 1946, the brand has shaped the definition of luxury fashion for more than 7 decades. Every name they choose as an ambassador is a statement about who they are, about where they're headed, about the future they're choosing to build. And they chose Jimin. Jimin flew to Paris. He sat front row at Paris Fashion Week. Photos of him alongside Kim Jones and the world's top designers spread across every major fashion publication internationally. But what left the deepest impression wasn't the glamour of it all. What stood out was how Jimin made Dior feel more accessible, more human, more emotional, without losing a single thread of its exclusive aura. That's not easy to do. But Jimin did it in a way that looked completely effortless. Vogue Runway's chief critic, Sarah Moore, described it as bringing poetic masculinity into luxury fashion, something that felt fresh, emotionally intelligent, and visually stunning. That's not the kind of praise a Vogue-level critic hands out casually. But Jimin's story doesn't stop there. Because just a few weeks after the Dior announcement, in March 2023, an American brand far older than Dior made the very same kind of announcement. Tiffany and Company, founded in New York City in 1837 by Charles Louis Tiffany. Yes, 1837, nearly 2 centuries ago, this brand is the most iconic symbol of American luxury there is. Their little blue box isn't just a box. It's a promise. It's a dream. And for almost 200 years, Tiffany has guarded that promise with extraordinary care. The names that have represented Tiffany over the years read like a list that would make anyone pause. Audrey Hepburn, Beyoncé, Lady Gaga, Gal Gadot, Zoe Kravitz. These aren't random names. These are cultural icons of the Western world, each defining their own era. And then Tiffany chose Jimin. Alexander Arnault, Executive Vice President of Tiffany and Company, described Jimin as a multifaceted artist and performer who embodies the energy, style, and modernity at the heart of the brand. In his own statement, Jimin called it a great honor to be part of a brand with such a deep passion for design, innovation, and art. The world's reaction? Extraordinary. The Instagram post announcing the collaboration received more than 4.2 million likes in the first 24 hours alone, making it one of the most responded to posts in Tiffany's history. The announcement tweet became the most liked tweet in the entire history of Tiffany's Twitter account, with 317,000 likes. For context, the tweet announcing Tiffany's collaboration with Nike received 28,000 likes. The announcement of Beyoncé's Tiffany campaign received 7,000 likes. Jimin received 317,000. Those numbers aren't just enthusiastic fans clicking hearts. That's real data about how far Jimin's influence reaches, past every boundary that would normally stop any other artist in their tracks. Now, if we step back for a moment and look at the bigger picture, what is it, really, that makes Jungkook and Jimin different from every other artist who has ever partnered with a major brand? The answer comes down to one word that gets underestimated way too often: authenticity. Jungkook with Calvin Klein isn't just a guy who got paid to wear jeans. He brings his real energy to it, the physicality, the confidence, the way he looks into a camera like he's telling you a story. The Calvin Klein Spring 2026 campaign that launched on February 24th proved it all over again. Jungkook dances in that campaign video in a way that only someone who truly lives inside music and movement can do. That's not something you can teach someone in a single day on set. That's just who he is. The same goes for Jimin with Dior and Tiffany. When Jimin wears Dior, there's a whole narrative flowing beneath that choice, because his connection to the brand existed long before any contract was drafted. When he wears Tiffany jewelry, there's a stillness in his face that doesn't look like someone doing a job. He looks like someone who is exactly where they're supposed to be. And that's what pushed these brands to step outside their own comfort zones. Calvin Klein, a brand that for decades was synonymous with a very specific kind of American aesthetic, opened itself to a new energy coming from Korea. Tiffany, which spent nearly 2 centuries building its story around American luxury, chose a young man from Busan to represent their values to the world. That's not just a business decision. That's an acknowledgement that the world has changed. That the definition of who gets to be the face of luxury, the face of fashion, the face of aspiration, all of that is being rewritten. And Jungkook and Jimin are two of the very few people currently holding the pen. Let's take a second and talk about what it actually took to get here. Because none of this happened overnight, and none of it was handed to them. Jungkook joined Big Hit Entertainment, the company that would eventually become HYBE, when he was just 15 years old. 15. He moved away from his family in Busan, trained for years in a system that is notoriously demanding, and poured everything he had into becoming not just a singer, not just a dancer, but a complete artist. The kind of person who, when placed in front of a camera for a Calvin Klein shoot, doesn't need direction to be compelling. He just is. That kind of presence isn't manufactured in a stylist chair. It's built over a decade of relentless work. Jimin's path was just as demanding. He trained as a contemporary dancer before joining BTS, and that foundation, the discipline, the body awareness, the emotional precision that comes from years of serious dance training, is what you see when he stands still in a Dior campaign and somehow commands every inch of the frame. He doesn't need to move to fill a room. And that's a rare thing. Fashion directors know it the moment they see it, and it's a quality that cannot be faked or filtered into existence. What both of them share, beyond the talent and the training, is an almost uncommon level of intentionality about how they show up in the world. Neither of them takes these collaborations lightly. When Jungkook partnered with Calvin Klein, he was involved in the creative conversations. When Jimin stepped into his role with Dior and Tiffany, he brought his own point of view, his sense of aesthetics, his understanding of what he wanted to say visually. These are not passive faces attached to famous names. They are active creative participants, and brands can feel the difference. That's also why, when you talk to people inside the fashion industry, stylists, photographers, creative directors, many of them will tell you the same thing about working with Jungkook and Jimin. They come prepared. They understand the brand's history. They ask questions. They bring ideas. That level of engagement is rare even among the most celebrated Western celebrities. And it's one of the reasons that brands don't just want to renew their contracts. They want to go deeper, to build something more meaningful, to find new ways to tell the story together. There's a word for that kind of relationship in business. Partnership. Real partnership. And that, more than any stock surge or viral Instagram post, is the foundation of everything that has made Jungkook and Jimin so extraordinarily valuable to the brands that are lucky enough to work with them. There's one more thing worth talking about, because behind all the numbers and the noise and the viral posts, there's a deeper question you might have been sitting with this whole time. Why does this matter? What does any of this actually mean for the rest of us? For a generation that grew up watching Hollywood films, reading Western fashion magazines, and absorbing a very specific standard of beauty and style, seeing two people from East Asia standing at the front of brands that have defined Western luxury for centuries is something that goes way beyond fashion. This is a cultural moment. This is proof that the power of genuine creativity, dedication, and real human connection has no geographic borders and no cultural limits. Morgan Stanley once reported that luxury spending in South Korea surged 24% in a single year, making Koreans the world's biggest per capita luxury consumers. The world's luxury brands saw those numbers, and they needed a bridge to reach this rapidly growing market. But what they found was something far bigger than a bridge to a single market. They found two individuals who could serve as bridges between East and West, between tradition and modernity, between the exclusivity of luxury and the kind of inclusivity that a new generation is demanding. Jungkook and Jimin aren't just selling products. They are reshaping the way the world thinks about who deserves to stand at the top of the global fashion and luxury industry. And this story isn't finished yet. Jungkook just launched his Calvin Klein Spring 2026 campaign on February 24th. Jimin continues to walk at the forefront of Dior at every major fashion week on the calendar. Both of them, alongside the other 6 members of BTS, are preparing for a massive group comeback that's set to shake the worlds of music and fashion simultaneously in 2026. So the next time you're sitting at that cafe, scrolling through Instagram, and you see the name Calvin Klein or Tiffany or Dior paired with a face from Korea, remember that you are watching history being made. Not just K-pop history, not just fashion history, but the history of how the world changes, one right collaboration at exactly the right moment. And 2 young men named Jungkook and Jimin are right there at the center of that change. That's the story. Simple but extraordinary. Familiar but full of surprises. just like the two people at the heart of it. See you in the next one.